children portrayed in TV and movies should just be puppets. we get Jim Henson up in here, you know, and it's just like a creative obstacle. It's like, it doesn't matter what movie you're making. You could be making a very serious drama, but if you have a 12-year-old, that's going to be a blue Muppet.
Welcome to Shoulda Books, the podcast about all the books you should have read by now. My name is Jonathan, and today I am joined by Stephen LaConte. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Hello, Jonathan. What a pleasure to be here. Long-time listener, first-time guest.
Well, thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. We just had our Patreon cold open where we reminisced on the days when we were roommates.
Yes.
And how we almost lost that house due to a couple different fires. There was the wildfires that swept LA and caused all sorts of pain and destruction. There was also the fire of the pizza oven,
right?
Which
yes.
We talked about when your boyfriend Jonny, Mr. Cakes, Jonny Cakes was here. So people might know you from that. They might know you as
Cake Twink.
As Cake Twink.
Yes.
We talked about. I stumbled over those words. I don't know why I felt uncomfortable.
It doesn't feel right to say at all.
It feels, especially as a straight man. I'm like, can I? Is it okay? Is it okay for me to say
You're
that?
allowed to say it. Honestly, anyone's allowed to say it at this point. I don't really know what happened, but here's the thing. So Jonny just one time blurted it out on his channel, and at the time I was not thinking that's gonna follow me forever.
Stick. Yeah,
but it does seem to be the case.
Well, the thing is that people might know you from that, but there are so many other things that
Cake
that
Twink
you
is
do.
sort of my biggest thing these days.
It's a lot to live up to.
Yeah.
But you are also the managing editor of Clickhole.
Yes.
Which is a publication. Is a publication? Is that the right?
Sure, we don't know.
Okay.
I mean, that seems like too sophisticated a term for what Clickhole is.
What would you describe it?
Clickhole is a comedy website originally founded by The Onion, if you know The Onion.
Yep.
So The Onion is satire of New York Times style newspapers.
Yes.
And then in 2014, they were like, there's this new thing called the internet. And there are these websites like BuzzFeed, and they write in a totally different way. Listicles, quizzes, articles that are way spicier with their language and stuff. And they were like, we want to be able to make fun of that kind of thing. So they made this website called Clickhole, which is meant to be a parody of BuzzFeed. Yeah. Ironically, I've worked for both places.
Yeah. Yes. So in addition to the Hole, you've also, you worked for BuzzFeed. You were an advice columnist.
Back in the day at BuzzFeed, I had an advice column, which at the time was called Hey Stephen, which was the name of a Taylor Swift song. Do you even know that? Do you know that?
Of course.
You don't know that.
Of course. I definitely can't call you Cake Twink if I don't know.
Okay.
If I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Hey Stephen was a Taylor Swift song, and I at the time felt quite confident that she was not going to sue me, I guess. So I did it. And she didn't sue me.
Okay.
I really set that up.
This episode was going to take a completely different turn.
Exactly.
Okay.
No, I definitely from a legal perspective shouldn't have done that, but I decided not to run it by any of BuzzFeed's lawyers, and nobody noticed. And then that was the name of my advice column for years. So.
Well, you have a new advice column now that presumably does not have any copyright infringement that I know of.
That's right. As far as I know, I mean, we looked it up. So last year I made it. I was like, I'm going to do advice column again, but this time I'll do it on Substack.
Yep.
I don't know if you've heard, but you're supposed to make your own work these days, right? So
brother, you're telling
heard the
me.
News? There are no media jobs anymore.
No,
so
you got to make your own, folks. You got to get out there and you got to rise and freaking fucking grind. I can't. I'll cut that out.
Before this podcast, I said, "Am I allowed to swear in this thing?" And you said, "Fuck yeah."
I said, "Fuck yeah." I said, "This is a cool podcast.
Yeah.
This isn't one of those lame, stuffy
so
kind of
I'm gonna
the
fucking
Atlantic
swear.
style."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a new advice column, but because it's going to be independently owned, I own it myself, I was like, I thought BuzzFeed could pay for my lawyers, but I was like, I can't afford a lawyer, especially against Taylor Swift. So I was like, we will rename it. So now it's Stephen Please.
Stephen Please. Stephen Please. And I really enjoy this column.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so delightful because one, you are really good at giving advice, I have to say.
Thank you.
But you're also you do these drawings, these illustrations that are very fun
Thank
as well.
you.
And I know they stress you out sometimes.
Yeah, it's like, it's like I have to send the email in an hour and I have no drawing.
Yeah.
And it's like I'm a 35-year-old man and suddenly I'm like frantically drawing like a puppy. And I'm like, I didn't think adulthood was going to look like this.
But I just want you to know that I appreciate the drawings.
Okay, good. I'm glad. I feel like it's if I don't have the drawings there, it's just so much text. And I feel like the drawings just like break it up.
Right.
I used to call it like an intermission in the middle. Can an email have an intermission?
You know what?
It
can does. But speaking of large blocks of text, that's kind of what we're here for.
Right.
We're here to talk about books.
Yes.
And I'm curious because we haven't really like taught in our everyday conversations. I don't really know what kind of reader you are.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm coming out on this podcast at kind of a perfect time because I am trying to reestablish a good practice with reading.
Okay.
I will admit, and you will see this in some of the book choices that I'm going to share later. I am a trashy person. And if you think you're going to hear me talk about like War and Peace in this episode, I'm so sorry for what's about to happen.
Okay, I'm glad you're not.
Yeah, but I love reading. I love books a lot. And I read a lot of nonfiction, and specifically, again, I already warned you, I am trash. I read a lot of celebrity memoirs.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like my favorite thing to read. Also, do you think that audiobooks count as reading?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely I do. Jonny caught some heat on when he was on for saying that they don't. And
I listened to that episode. I missed this part.
I think I'm trying to remember exactly what he said. If I have time to find the tape, I will put it in right here.
I listened to the audiobook. That counts. I just don't think it does. Really? No.
Some folks were not happy with him, and I gotta say, hey, you know what? Lay off Jonny.
Yeah,
that's
no,
my friend.
don't lay off Jonny. I'll tell you, that man, he's just saying things. You know what I mean? And he'd be the first to admit that. Like he just says whatever's at the top of his mind. 3 minutes later, he can't stand by it whatsoever.
But no, I 100% think that that audiobooks count. I think I've started listening to more audiobooks.
Yeah,
and it's a great way to like, for lack of a better term, get your numbers up.
Sure.
Because then you can do it while you're doing something else.
You can read in the shower.
You can. So actually, this brings me to one of my kind of personal bugaboos. I don't know if I'm using that word correctly.
I've never heard the word before. So
a bugaboo. Yeah. It's one of those words that I said it and I didn't have 100% confidence in it.
I think you just have to commit.
And I
be like Jonny, just confidently say it, even if it's wrong.
It's one of my fucking bugaboos.
Exactly.
Is doing like consuming media in the shower. I am against it.
Oh,
I am 100%. I think it's profane.
Really? But why?
Because I think that in this modern world where you are getting bombarded with the radiation of everyone's bullshit and getting advertised to it every single moment, there are very few instances where you can truly unplug and just be alone with your thoughts and having a sensuous like body experience. And the shower is kind of, for me, like the last retreat of like, I'm going to be in there. No one's going to bother me. And I can just be alone with my thoughts and get some good, have a good think.
This feels like such a healthy perspective that I don't share at all. I'm not kidding. I'm in the shower watching reels. Do
you have like a waterproof phone case, or are you just like kind of holding it out of the stream?
I have good news. I don't think Apple spread this information far enough. They made the iPhones water resistant now. You can just do it.
That should be the ad.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, Apple, if you want to pay me to do this commercial, I will make the commercial for you. You as long as you're not submerging it like 5 meters under, look it up. You definitely like a little splish splash in the shower. Not a problem.
Wow. Okay.
I used to put it in a Ziploc bag before. But I'm doing lots of things. Like I'm listening to podcasts. I'm writing emails.
I will say, if you want to listen to this podcast in the shower, that's okay.
Well, there you go.
That's all right.
Yeah.
If you want to read Steven's advice column, I guess that's fine.
I would love for people to read my advice column in the shower. Honestly, I think that's like an appropriate.
Relax.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, not
Control
like
yourself.
that. Maybe a little like that.
Maybe a little like that.
Maybe a little.
Some of the questions, people. Yeah.
I have thought about doing like a sort of after dark version of the column, and maybe that could be a time where I invite the audience to be nude.
Specifically, like you have to read this nude.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I mean, it'd be like honor system.
Honor system. Yeah, there's no
make you prove it, but that would be the goal.
So so speaking of reading, whether nude or not nude, you have brought 3 books.
Yes.
That you think everyone should read.
Yes.
And I am very excited to hear what they are. What is the first book?
Should I go sort of like chronologically in my life?
I think so. I think that could be an interesting.
Okay.
I also don't know what these books are.
Right.
Sometimes I know what the book. I know that I can't talk. Sometimes I know the books that the guests bring, and sometimes I say, you know what, fuck it. Let's do it live. I don't know what your books are.
And I came in and I was like, do you want to know? And I think I even offered like, should I run them by you? Because I was like, these are not. Again, it's not going to be infinite.
And
jest.
Now I'm getting nervous. Now you gave me the out. You're like, are you sure? Are you sure? So
let me put it this way: like pretty much every book that I like is something that is readily available, like at an airport.
Okay,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's
a man of the people.
Yeah, exactly. So here's the first and foremost example of this. My favorite book of all time. Is Bossypants.
Okay,
by Tina Fey.
Do you know
God. Have you not read this book?
I have not read this book.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, so I read a lot of books by comedians, right?
Yeah.
And this is like the template. This is like every comedian that has written a book post Bossypants is trying to write Bossypants.
Okay. What about Bossypants makes it so singular? Is it like the structure? Is it just, I mean, she's brilliant.
Yes.
And she's so funny. So I'm not surprised that her book is amazing.
It's so effortlessly funny. And you're reading it and you're like cackling out loud, which like it makes you feel like a little nuts, you know, because you're like,
especially when you're just like fully nude.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
When I'm fully nude in the shower. Yeah. And by the way, this has happened because I was going to say, whenever it's a celebrity sort of memoir, I mean, I own the paper copy of Bossypants, but I also listen to the audio recording, which does Tina Fey listen to this podcast? Because I do have a OneNote.
I hope so.
I bet she does.
Yeah, let it fly, though, just in case.
Yeah, I bet she saw your Times Square billboard. Hello.
We got you.
I'll brag for you. Tina Fey, if you're listening, you do need to re-record the audiobook because it's old and there's like some sound issues with it.
Oh, she say some words that maybe we don't say now?
No, not even that. I mean, literally, like it's a bad microphone.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay.
No, but I love listening to celebrities tell their own stories like with their voice. So that's why I was asking about audiobooks. But I have listened to that Bossypants audiobook. So it's like my Cocomelon. Like I put it on if I'm feeling like, cranky or and no matter how many times I listen to it, it is so comforting to me. But I think what makes it so great is it really just walks you through like the different phases of her life, her childhood, her early career in Chicago, trying to like break through in entertainment, booking SNL, moving to New York. Yeah. Then also like falling in love, getting married, having a family, everything about her life that you'd be curious about, she talks about in this way that it's just like, you just don't want to put it down for a second. You have to read this book. Okay. I thought I was giving you choices that you were like, yeah, I read that a million years ago. No, you need to read.
That's the thing with this podcast is like, obviously I'm doing this podcast, but like, in the grand scheme of things, I haven't read that many books.
Yeah, okay.
Which some people would see as a liability, but I see it as an opportunity. There's so many books I haven't read yet.
Yeah.
And I do like her a lot. I think she's a brilliant writer and performer.
Yeah.
And I'm always curious with any sort of memoir, but especially with celebrity memoirs, is how edited do you feel like it is? Do you feel like the kind of the dark parts are edited out? Do you feel like they're there in a way that like pays lip service but doesn't really get into it? Or do you feel like it's like really raw and honest?
Well, it's not raw because I think that when you're writing like in a comedic voice, you actually have a responsibility to the comedy more even than the truth. And
interesting. We're going to dig into that.
Yeah. And I think that, writing comedy is a lot like hosting like a party.
Yeah.
You have to make sure the vibes are immaculate. Now, she does talk about certain aspects of her life that are more serious. She was attacked with a knife when she was a little kid.
Oh my God.
And she has like a bad scar on her face.
Oh, wow.
But she talks about it in a way where you feel as the reader, like not worried for her well-being.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
She was attacked in a funny way.
Yeah, exactly. It was a little slapstick. Yeah. No, she just kind of, the way that she frames it, she kind of talks about like, this is like a very upsetting experience for my parents. And I'm not going to go into like all the details, but but she talks about it because she does have a visible scar on her face that, people have speculated about, like she's on TV.
Right.
But, I think that's kind of important because you can do really compelling writing that is tragic and scary and opens up all your vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. I don't know how funny you can be doing that. At least in the way that she is. Her tone always conveys as a writer that it's very authoritative and it's very like, I have lived these things. I have been through them. I know what I think of them and I'm going to share the version of it that I think is the funniest. So yeah, I think it is probably in this case like pretty filtered, Okay. She tells stories about, conflicts she had on set or, in her marriage or whatever. But again, you're never left feeling like scared,
Right.
It's a feel good book.
For your own writing, how do you feel about that kind of relationship to the truth? Like, do you feel like, what's kind of the ratio for you?
Yeah, that's a good question because I think that like for millennials like us, I'm
fucking Gen Z, dude.
Right, of course, yeah. Normally I have my hair down because I'm trying to be Gen Z now, but I put it up in the millennial sort of way just for today.
I'm coming on the millennial podcast.
Exactly,
so I'm gonna do it.
But I think that millennials there was a period of time like circa, let's say 2016, 2017, 2018, where it was like, oh, if I want to be a writer, I have to trauma dump. Like, what's the worst thing that's ever happened to me?
Yep.
And I'm just gonna like rip that out of me. By the way, this will be kind of ironic when I mention one of my other books, which I also love.
Right,
but for the purposes of talking about Bossypants, what I love is that she doesn't do that. She exercises a lot of restraint. It would be really, I think it might have been like lower hanging fruit to center that whole book around this traumatic experience from her childhood and like overcoming it by being a comedian. Instead, it's kind of a footnote. That feels like a very Gen X, approach to trauma where they're like, yeah, it happened, but whatever, I don't care. And I don't know that one is right or wrong, but I'm interested in the practice of keeping some stuff to yourself.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I'm trying to figure out which path, which branch of the Sylvia Plath fig tree I'm going to go down. Because I think that you're 100% like on the money in terms of millennial writers and like the kind of like trauma Olympics that it sort of felt like. First of all, where do you think that urge came from?
I think that there were some very successful people
there it is
who did that, and then this is always the case, in a generation of Hollywood, there will be a few stars who really break out, and then there will be a million people who try to create themselves in that same image, because they think, well, if it worked for them, it should work for me. But the problem is that it worked for that person because it was exciting and new,
it was fresh,
and you can never replicate it. You always have to just be doing what is true to you.
There's only going to be one Girls.
Absolutely. And Girls is a perfect example because Girls is a brilliant show that spawned so many boring pieces of art from other people
so
who were
much mediocrity.
They're like, I'm kind of like Lena Dunham. I like to feel bad for myself and I have a mental health issue and my friends are annoying. And it's like, okay, well now you've got this shitty fucking web series that no one's going to watch. You know what I mean? Like, so, so I guess, I don't know how I even got on this topic, but I think that it's important to just stay true to who you are. And I think there are going to be some creators who brilliantly mine their trauma to create art, like to create effect. So I'm not saying you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in the fact that Bossypants is like a good time start to finish. Even though you're talking about serious stuff, she as the authoritative narrator voice, you feel like she's got this storytelling under control. I'm not scared for Tina Fey.
I think another reason of why that kind of became the milieu and kind of the structure that so many people followed. I think that 2016, damaged all of us.
Yeah.
And I think that in the wake of Trump's victory, there kind of emerged this belief in this system of making work that said that like everything has to be like morally good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything that we as creators have this kind of, you know, God-given divine like duty now to like teach people how to be good people.
Yes.
And so it kind of like led to, I think, a lot of very didactic writing, which is just like, I'm going to explain exactly who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. And this is all kind of in response to like, because the years leading up to Trump were filled with things like Mad Men and The Sopranos, where it was like the glorification of the anti-hero.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of this like backlash of like almost scolding and very moralistic type stuff that I think kind of goes hand in hand with like, here's everything I learned in therapy. And therapy made me a better person because I didn't vote for Trump.
Right.
And so here's how I'm going to like tell everyone else to be a good person. And it's like, look, that's true to a certain extent. Like I do think that as a, you know, as a writer, as a creator, whatever, like there is a responsibility to not put stuff in the world that, you know, leads that like glorifies bad behavior in a way that people watch it and go, fuck yeah, that's what I want to be. Which like, there was a lot of shit in the last, 20 years or so that like people watched, like if you watched like The Sopranos and you're like, actually, Tony Soprano's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to be like that, but it's like, it brings up that question of like, where does the responsibility of the audience start versus the responsibility of the creator ending?
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of rambling at this point.
No, I'm driving with what you're saying because these are questions that I wrestle with a lot. Like as a writer, if I love Tony Soprano, does that mean that I want to get heavily involved in organized crime?
Well, in your case, yeah. Obviously.
Actually, I mean, that's a different podcast, but I come from like an East Coast Italian family. Yeah. There was a little bit of that going on. But,
interesting. Okay.
We haven't talked about this?
Not really.
I've
you want to talk about it now publicly?
Maybe
we'll
not.
Put it behind the paywall.
Yeah, subscribe to the Patreon if you want to hear some stories. But I think that this is also like part of the like inherent cringe of like putting your work out there is that like art is responsive to the present moment. So when I look at writing that I was doing in like 2017, like that first year of Trump where everyone was just so it was like, know, and on all of my writing was like, well, as an LGBTQ American, and it's like so annoying. And it's like, it's also true. Like, like everything I was saying was honest to how I felt. And but it's like, I look back on that now. I'm like, oh, that didn't change anyone's mind. Yeah. This was, you could argue it would be like self-serving because it was more like me seizing on, this is like the cultural capital of the moment. Yeah. And so I think that nowadays I try to be less like reactive to that kind of a thing, And even like with the advice column, for example, like I just try to like, I mean, of course, when things are going on in the world that I want to talk about, I will. But I also try to write with like a broader view of that than what's happening in the current moment. I don't know if I'm successful at that.
Well, I think that to kind of bring it back to what you're saying about Bossypants, of like, this is a book that is just a good time from start to finish. And like, I think that's okay. Yeah. Like, I think that to kind of go back to that 2017 brain of just like, I think there was a moment where it didn't feel like that was okay. Yeah. Where it was like, yeah, it can be funny, but if it's not, teaching people to be good, then it's not okay. And it's 1,000%. Like, if you can't, like, it just is going to make bad art. Like art asks questions. It doesn't answer them, Absolutely. I would also argue that creating a book that's just a good time is actually a technically much harder feat than writing something sad. Yeah. Oh, you know what I mean? Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100%. In the same way that, and you're an actor, doing like acting in a comedy it's often said that is more difficult than doing a drama. For you, maybe. Well, yeah, I think you have the range to do it all, Jonathan Kirk. But thank you. But that is, more like of that, please. Like these Steve Carell's, Jim Carrey's, the people who like do both will often say like, actually, like showing up to do the drama where I just like sat and cried was easier than having to like time a joke. Like there's a certain syncopation and rhythm to comedy that you have to nail. Yeah.
And it like either works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
Whereas with drama, there's I think more openness to like subjectivity.
Well, it's also like there are things you can do in a drama that are going to get the reaction that like it's not the same for comedy. And like the movie I'm thinking of is Hamnet. I don't know if you saw Hamnet.
No, I haven't. I've heard it's kind of a drag, but I'm interested.
It's incredibly sad.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly sad in a way of like, it's almost like a paint by numbers sad.
Okay.
Like in the way that like a paint by numbers painting can be aesthetically beautiful.
Right.
It's like this, like, I don't want to spoil anything. I think maybe the only person in America who walked into that movie knowing nothing about it. I did not know the big thing that happens in the story that is the story. I didn't know that.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Okay, if you haven't seen Hamlet, skip 30 seconds. What do you think it is?
Well, it's about Shakespeare writing Hamlet after his son Hamnet dies.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't know the son died.
Oh yeah. Well, at first, when I saw that it was Hamnet, I was like, did the poster have a typo? I was like, why is this happening this way? But it turns out this is the true story. His name was Hamnet.
His name was Hamnet. Yeah.
Sometimes if there's a movie that's like looks like a real bummer, I'll just read the Wikipedia page just to be in the know. But I'm like, I don't need to put myself through that.
What are some other movies that you've done that for?
Well, I do that with all horror movies. So
I think we've talked about this. Yeah. Okay.
So what's the one with Aunt Gladys? Weapons? Is that what's called?
Weapons. Yeah.
So like where like the kids are like running around trying to kill. Yeah. So I was like, I saw the trailer and I was like, I need to know what that's about. But there's simply no way I could sit there and watch that. I'm a chicken. I mean, we're talking. My favorite book is Bossypants. Who do you think I am? And so like so I just I'll read the Wikipedia page summaries of horror movies because that doesn't scare me.
Yeah.
A paragraph of text on a white background, I'm fine.
When did you read Bossypants the first time?
The first time, I mean, the year, like the minute it came out,
you were there at midnight.
Yeah, like literally, like it was like.
When did it come out?
I mean, I'm okay. We can look this up. Am I allowed to look things up in the middle of the podcast?
Yeah.
I want to say 2008,
I'll vamp.
but let me check my work. I mean, this was the era of like women just absolutely dominating SNL.
Oh,
so you had,
right. Okay,
Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Kristen Wiig, Maya Rudolph.
I don't think SNL was good.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now I'm like the old man shouting at the sun.
Everyone's always like, SNL was great when I was in high school.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think it's good now. Ashley Padilla, you know her?
Oh, yeah.
She's brilliant.
Yeah.
But of course, it was 2011. Okay.
2011,
but of course, of course, I'm that millennial who thinks, well,
right.
back when it's 2011. So she was off SNL at that point, but still like in the ether. She was making 30 Rock.
Oh, right.
And the memoir goes through like Second City Days, SNL, 30 Rock, Mean Girls. And yeah, it's just a good time. I also think so 2011, I would have been ending college.
Okay. And
kind of thinking, okay, I graduated with a degree in theater, which is as useful as it sounds. And so I was like, what am I going to do? And so I think I was reading books like this to get insight into like, well, how did she do it? And so I used it almost as like a textbook too.
Was there anything you learned from her story that helped you in your path?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did when I got to LA after graduating was I took classes at the Groundlings. And that was very much inspired by her talking about her experience in Second City. So like doing improv, which I don't know I feel like now if you move to LA and you want to do comedy, you probably don't do improv. You probably do like TikToks and stuff.
I do think, I think that TikTok absorbs a lot of the creative energy of every art form, like in a way that I don't think we've really seen the ramifications of yet.
Right. We're just too in it right now.
We're too in it right now, but like, cause I know when I moved to LA, cause I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to write and direct films. And there were a lot of people like me, and there was a lot of, people who were down to make scrappy independent films for no money at all. And I think that young people, again, I sound like a fucking old man. Young people are still eager and love making stuff together because it's fucking fun. It's fun to make stuff with your friends.
Yeah.
I think that energy gets funneled into TikToks, and then those TikToks. My whole thing with TikTok is that like, it's the first time in humanity where you could be famous without being rich.
Interesting.
Like it's this incredible way to get exposure, But to convert that exposure into a sustainable career is like really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And really the only way to do it is like through brand deals. And like the second brands get involved, like your ability to make anything truly interesting just completely like just gets halved at least.
Yeah. Well, we won't say that in front of Jonny Cakes. Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. And this is a thing that we talk about a lot, Johnny and I, you know, it's like TikTok giveth and TikTok taketh away.
Yeah. Like there's great things about it. And there's also, but the flip side of that is that other things, you know,
there's something very democratic about it, about that if you make a piece of content that's good, then it can go far. But also even the existence of a word like content is a bummer.
Yeah. And so it's like, it makes me think like, you know, what is the future of cinema? What is the future of like long form film when everyone is kind of cutting their teeth on making short form things, you know? I don't know. Maybe it's going to be great. Maybe it's going to lead. Maybe it's going to. I think that there's very much potential for like there to be like a new French New Wave.
Yeah,
you know, in the way that like the French New Wave took kind of turned cinema on its head.
And I definitely know what new French Wave means.
Yeah, well, it was just like in the early '60s, maybe late '50s. People in the comments will let me know. There was this group of French filmmakers who just completely broke all the rules. Everything that was kind of like what you would expect from films, like that they're shot on studios, that the camera is like locked down, that actors look a certain way. Like they just kind of flipped all that. They shot on location, they shot handheld, they shot real people, they shot in like existing light. And those films are still like films like Breathless or The 400 Blows. Like they're still very, they have a vibrance and a vitality to them that's like still exciting. Like I'm still waiting for that to happen with kind of like the TikTok generation. And to my eyes, it hasn't happened yet. Well, and maybe I should fucking get on that. But
I think the real like limiting factor right now with like all this vertical video stuff is that it's like 3 companies own all of it.
Yeah.
So you could make a really beautiful short film, but if it's not blessed by Mark Zuckerberg, it's not. No one's going to see it.
Yeah.
And that is different than how it used to be, where you could make a piece of art and you could pound the pavement and get it made somewhere, you know, and get it seen by someone. So.
You know,
I'm
get
not
off my lawn.
I'm not convinced that like TikTok is going to be the new Hollywood, but it has a place, especially if you're a hyper realistic cake baker.
Yeah.
And then your brand deals buy your boyfriend dinner. So you can't be that mad
you know
about
what?
them.
We you know, and look, if you know, a huge brand wanted to sponsor this podcast, I would think about it.
All right.
I would, but you'd have to, you know.
All right, Tina Fey.
I'm not.
If you know anyone.
Tina Fey. So this recording is flying by, Stephen. We got to move on to the next. We got to move on to the next book. Unfortunately, unless any last thoughts on Tina?
I would say if you haven't read this book, you should read it. But I think you are the only person left who hasn't.
Okay,
I mean, I really chose like
last to get the menu,
the most. Yeah,
the memo.
But please, I mean, read it. It's a good time. And yeah, just if you're feeling down, that book will cheer you up.
Okay. Well, it's too bad I never feel down. So.
Well, there you go. What a blessing.
Okay. So what's next on the docket?
Okay. Let's do an opposites thing.
Ooh. Okay.
So another celebrity memoir.
Okay.
Much newer.
All right.
And full of trauma dumping.
Okay.
But brilliantly so. So it's not dumping.
Okay.
I'm glad my mom died, Jeanette McCurdy.
Okay.
Have you read this?
I have not read this, but I really, really want to.
Are you familiar with
I'm familiar with the whole, like, first of all, from all accounts, she sounds like she's a phenomenal writer.
Yeah, it's like bizarre because you kind of think, how did they just happen to cast on iCarly this woman who was going to be like a breakout author of our time?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of celebrity memoirs, like the writing isn't up to par. Maybe they're using like a pretty generic ghostwriter, or if they're writing themselves, it's like very simple prose.
Yeah.
This is like a beautiful book, like the way that she tells the story is so compelling, and she's not writing it with a ghostwriter. It's all her.
Yeah.
And her story is harrowing.
Yeah.
And beautiful. and I picked up this book. So you know this story, but my dog died like very suddenly in 2023, and I was in like a much more profound grief than was maybe normal, but I was in it, and so I was like, sort of like, I guess, looking for books about grief to sort of process it. And I come upon this book, which obviously has a really spicy title.
For sure. It's one of the all-timers in terms of titles. Like, it just grabs you and you're like, what the fuck?
And probably did contribute to the early success. Because I think, yes, then people read it and they're like, actually, this is a brilliant piece of art. But in order to get people to read it, you probably have to have the title like that,
Yeah.
And so I'm reading, and of course I'm thinking like, well, if she's glad that her mom died, maybe she can make me glad that my dog died. Because I'm like, I don't know what I'm in for.
Grief does, it does interesting things to all of us.
And it's just like, I don't know. I can't say that it really helped me process my grief. It just turned out to be a really good book.
It just
and something that I've returned to again because in this question of like, there's the Bossypants universe where you're not really going deep on the trauma.
Yeah,
this is a book that's doing quite a different thing. She is telling you some really dark stuff, and you are worried for her. You know what I mean? Because how can you not be? Like what this child went through over the course of her young years is really disturbing, and you're scared. But the way that she tells the story, it really brings you into the place. You feel like you're living it with her. And then you come out the other side of it and you really have an appreciation for like, wow, that's a survivor right there.
Did you watch iCarly?
You
were a little older. Right?
Yeah, I was like on the generation where it was like, it was not my show, but like sometimes it would be like passively on. I'd be like, what's that iCarly about?
That's kind of how I felt about it too. Well, one, I didn't have cable. Okay. So I would only get Disney Channel in binges when I would like go to my grandparents' house. And it was kind of the thing of like, we're going to sit down and we're going to watch Nickelodeon.
Right.
It doesn't really matter what's on.
Yeah.
We're just, it's a scarcity mindset. We're
just going to, get it while it's there.
So like, I was never a huge fan. And like, I felt like I was maybe a little bit older, than, but I was old for my age. So,
so sophisticated.
But
by the way, I was not old for my age. Like I was probably watching iCarly and like 16 years old being like, this is kind of good.
Yeah. I know there was that documentary that came out of around the same time. Was she's was it called Quiet on Set?
Yeah.
I think, okay, yeah.
About Dan Schneider.
Right. Was that a Dan Schneider show?
Yes.
It was. Okay.
And she talks a lot about Dan Schneider, although she does not name him. I think she just calls him the producer. Like capital T, capital
the lawyers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that also it's like when you have someone who has like abused you, it's like the last thing you want to do is be embroiled in like a legal battle with them and have to like see them in court.
Oh God, yeah, that would be awful.
So it's like everything she's saying is, I'm sure, is truthful and defensible in court. But I feel like you're just probably in a headspace of like, I don't want to have to pick a fight with this person,
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so you're getting that element of it. But the story really starts with the fact that her mother really wanted Jeanette to become an actress. It's like, I think it was one of those things where it's like she maybe saw this for herself, and then it's like, she's a mother of children, it's not going to happen for her, but she's like, but you, and so as like a 8-year-old girl, Jeanette is very clear-minded about the fact like she does not want to be like going on these auditions, but she sees how happy it makes her mom.
Yeah.
And then over time, like the abuse starts to escalate. There's like sexual abuse and a lot of emotional abuse, and like, really fueling an eating disorder, telling her like, don't eat food because, you have to be like stick thin to be on television.
Oh my God.
It takes you through. It's sort of endless. What this kid went through, and then it's all the more mind blowing that this was a kid on television that like everyone knew, but then of course going to set with the producer, and dealing with all that. So and that's kind of an accidental pun because Dan Schneider made the show All That, but I know I just want to be clear, not dealing with the show All That, dealing with like the horrors of her family, and the title of the book, she's really coming around to saying like, I had to accept that I am glad that my mom died, because even though the loss was sad, I never would have been freed from her grasp. Like, she could not begin to process the abuse she went through until she was not in her ear saying like, I'm so good to you. I do everything for you. You know, you wouldn't have anything without me. So, just a really interesting take on grief. And I think, again, as I wrestle with this question as a writer of like, to what extent am I supposed to put my trauma out there versus keep it to myself? I'm like, now here's someone who's really in a powerful way sharing every part of her story.
Yeah.
Unvarnished.
I'm curious about the entertainment industry aspect of it. Like, did you kind of learn anything about this business that you didn't know before? Or was it kind of more of a like, yeah, that's how it is?
Well, you really get an appreciation. I think we kind of know the broad talking points of what it is to be a child star. But when you actually get down to the brass tacks, so the fact that like a lot of these parents, because you have to have an adult on set with them, a lot of the parents will like quit their jobs and take percentages of the kid's salary, saying my job, I have to be here, so you're going to pay me. So you kind of understand the financial mechanisms that the parents use to steal their kids' money. And I think it opens up a lot of questions about the ethics of these networks that hire children. I mean, I kind of closed that book thinking children should not be allowed to be actors. Like screenwriters should have to figure that out. The kid should always be 2 inches off screen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's just, you know how sometimes when there's a baby, they'll just have like a bundle of like newspaper or something, you know, a pillow.
It's just, and they're just like popping it up.
It just needs to be until they're like 18. The reason I bring it up is because the first couple of years that I worked in showbiz, I was like a production assistant on like children's television show. So like I worked with a bunch of kids and their parents. And I never saw anything even remotely dark like that in that way. But like I saw things that were dark in the sense of like, oh, this is child labor. Like we are, you know, making these children work when clearly like they don't want to. And this is having a very detrimental effect on their education because like the you know, and I've been out of the game for a while, so I don't know, especially with like the strikes and the reconfiguring and stuff that's happened since I kind of left traditional production. But at the time, when you had a kid on set and it was during the school year, they had to get 3 hours worth of school done, and you could only do it in 20-minute chunks. So basically, depending on their age, you could only have them for a certain amount of time. So like if they were, God, it's been years since I've had to think about these numbers, but I used to think about them a lot because it was part of my job was like, you know, running the clock and keeping track of all this stuff of just like, okay, if they're under 8, you can only have them for like 8 hours or something like that. 3 of those hours have to be school. You can only do school in 20-minute chunks. So if you send them to school, 15 minutes go by and they're like, actually, we need them again. You pull them out. That 15 minutes doesn't count. So all day, and again, this was part of my job, was like figuring out the math of like, okay, how can we get a 20-minute chunk before we need them again? Okay, so this scene, we have to change lenses and we have to flip the world, which means we're shooting this way. We're flipping the world, which means we have to move the cameras all the way to the other side and now point back this way and then dress the set looking this way. I think that means 20 minutes. Okay, send them to school. Get them into school right now. And my boss is like on the, like, are they in? Have they started? And so like, I would like shut the trailer door. The like teacher would give me the thing and then I would start the clock. And then we'd have to get like 20 minutes. And it was just like, the whole time I'm like, this fucking sucks. Like these kids aren't learning anything.
And you can't imagine that like this is the way to get a proper education, or even that the tutors, are they really on set to teach them, or are they on set to make the production work?
The teachers are there. Like, the teachers also have the vested interest of, or competing interest of like, they want to get hired again. So there's that whole element of it too. There's also the element of like, a 7-year-old should not be coworkers with like a 45-year-old grip who has a DUI. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah. I mean, absolutely. I think it's kind of strange that if you're a kid, you can't consent to like physical relationships. You can't consent. You can't like drink or vote. But we say, oh, but if you want to work a full-time job, that's fine.
That's totally
no worries.
Well, you know what,
Come
Steven?
on.
This is fucking America.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you can earn some money,
if there's money to be earned.
If you can increase value for the Disney shareholders, then don't worry about school. Yeah. Just come on in. It's really bizarre to me. And so my friend worked for many years on different shows for I'll just say a certain children's network.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay.
And I saw a couple tapings of various shows on this network. And what I saw was that, that watching like a sitcom being taped is actually quite boring because it's a long day. They're doing like the same joke 4 times and they want you to have a big laugh every time. And like, it's brutal to watch. I'm a grown ass man watching it and I'm like, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
And there was this one little girl, I won't say her name, but I sometimes Google her to see if she's okay. The answer is kind of.
Oh, God.
And she was so cute and she was such a consummate professional, like such a robot.
Yeah.
Like knew all of her lines, was so meticulous about like hitting her marks, delivering it perfectly. And then when they called cut, she was literally just like blank, like a void. And I was like, it's the same thing to me as like what we do. I don't know. I'm making this comparison, but like to like Shamu in SeaWorld, where it's a trained pony, and it's like, she can do this now, but at what cost to her life later?
Right.
And this was a show that was very popular, and I believe that over time, more and more family members start coming in and like getting on the payroll.
Yep.
I'll do publicity. I'll be your stylist.
Yep.
I'll be your on-set monitor. And suddenly it's like this person's working their ass off and they're a child and they're going to turn like 18 and it's all going to be gone, like the money.
Yeah.
And they will not have gone to school.
Yeah.
And then we wonder, how come they all get DUIs and end up in jail? It's like, well, because we fry their brains at a very young age.
It's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I promise we'll get back to the book.
This basically is the book.
Okay, well, this is relevant. I've been thinking a lot, obviously, about AI and what that means for the movie business. I think everyone who works in it, even someone like me who is very like tertiary or whatever 5 degrees, whatever that word is, like away from, I'm in entertainment, but I'm not really. Anyway, there are so many broken people that the entertainment business has left in its wake. And I think the conversation right now is like, oh, it's so bad that the machines are going to replace all the people. And that's ultimately, I think, where I'm at. But I'm like, is there an argument of like, oh, well, at least we won't have like fucked up child stars anymore.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Like, I don't, is there a way to have this business not leave behind so much human wreckage?
Yeah.
Or is that always going to be the way that it is until the machines replace us all?
Right. Yeah. I mean, my feeling with like, I never want to see a movie with AI people.
Same.
But I take your point that like, I guess if you're doing like Hereditary, where a little girl is beheaded. I mean, if you're going to run that set with a real kid, you have to be so careful about how you talk to them about what's happening, how you get the performance out of them, because they have to be quite scared. I don't know. Maybe in 20 years, we'll find out that actually like an AI generated child getting beheaded is better, creates less human suffering than having a real kid do that. But here's my pitch, because I was thinking about this. Children portrayed in TV and movies should just be puppets. We get Jim Henson up in here, and it's just like a creative obstacle. It's like, it doesn't matter what movie you're making. You could be making a very serious drama, but if you have a 12-year-old, that's going to be a blue Muppet. Voiced by like Jenny Slate, someone with like a childlike voice.
Yeah, I'm into this.
Yeah. That's my pitch, not AI, puppets.
Puppets. I love puppets.
Yeah.
So much.
I do too.
And puppets are I worked on those jobs that I worked at where I was having to watch the clock for the kids. There was also a lot of puppets.
Oh, cool.
And God, just some of the hardest laughs that I've ever had have come because of puppets. So I'm 100% on board with this. I think replace all the kids with puppets.
And what we haven't seen yet is puppets doing like serious drama. And maybe there's something there, probably not. But
yeah,
it's
tough. I think I can't think of an example. I'm sure someone in the comments is like breaking their keyboard right now
exactly,
to say that, you didn't see this, this film from Lithuania.
Sure, and don't say like Kermit had a serious moment in the Muppets Take Man. No, we're talking like a real like
it's full on drama, but it's done through puppets.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like a tear falling down a felt face. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I do really want to read. I'm glad my mom died. Was this an audiobook? Or did you read
she has both the audiobook and the paper. I read that one
okay.
Through paper first, and then I listened to the audiobook later because I wanted to hear how her it's so personal that I was like, I wonder what I'll get out of it by listening to it. And I did. I got something.
I'm curious, what did you get from the audio recording that you didn't get from the paper recording, from reading it in its physical form? Yeah,
I think that when you do an audiobook recording, not that I've done one, but I just know what it is.
This is kind of like one.
What's that?
I said this is kind of
exactly.
Like one.
Yeah, this is the closest I've ever been to recording.
This could have been an email, but it wasn't.
Right, exactly. And what I do is I send emails.
You send emails, but maybe you should do audiobooks of those emails.
It'd be kind of funny if I did a podcast and it was like this, and the premise was like,
it could have been
that could have been an email, because that is literally my life. But yeah, when you're recording audiobooks, it's like a 12-hour day. You're like, there's like an iPad, and you're just reading all day, and they don't want much inflection. Like the director will tell you, like, don't want to be like screaming and crying. You want to have like a relatively like even tone throughout. It's like a better listening experience. But even so, when people are talking about traumatic things they've been through, the voice can't help but convey an extra layer of feeling. Sometimes there are times where someone might choke up during an audiobook, and you just think that's probably the cleanest take they got. Because there are times where like the author just can't read the paragraph without breaking down. I guess it's kind of creepy that I'm like, oh, that's so good and juicy, but it brings me more closer to the human who made the art. And I find that to be interesting.
Yeah. And I think that in particular for folks who say that audiobooks like don't count, like I think that right there, especially when it's different when someone who's not the author is reading it. But when the author themselves is reading it, like having those moments, it just makes it so much more impactful.
Yeah. I will also say, like, I only listen to audiobooks for nonfiction. I only listen to audiobooks that are read by the author.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because if it's like a fiction book and it's just like a random British lady, I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but I'd rather read this at my own pace.
My thing with fiction, and I do listen to audiobooks in fiction. I'm listening to Giovanni's Room right now.
Oh, cool.
And it's read by Matt Bomer. Is that a person? Yeah. Is that a person?
It isn't. Is he ever?
Is he ever?
This is where Jonny would be flipping out, because Matt Bomer is so fine.
Yeah.
One time, I want you to finish this, but one time Jonny got mad at me because he had a dream where he hooked up with Matt Bomer, and he was like, would you be mad if I? And I was like, well, yeah. I mean, if you cheated on me, and he was mad. He's like, I should be allowed just Matt Bomer. And to his credit, I gave it to him. I was like, you know what? If Matt Bomer loves Is It Cake, go for it. Please continue.
Okay, so for those for the Bomer heads, he reads Giovanni's Room, and he by James Baldwin, and he does a great job, and he gives accents to people in a fun way.
Cool.
But my thing with fiction is that like it can sometimes impose someone else's interpretation of a character on it in a way that is not the case when you're just reading it from the page.
Right.
Like when they give characters different voices.
Yeah.
Like I remember when we did back in the old days of this podcast, I did 1984, and the guests had listened like to the audiobook, and they were like, Yeah, the voice that the narrator gave like the one female character in the book like made her sound really dumb and like annoying.
Interesting.
Which like wasn't my interpretation. Like reading the book on page, I didn't find that character that way.
Yeah.
Which I mean, I think Orwell did have a problem with women, so like it was there a little bit, but like not to the same extent.
No, that's a good point though. Yeah, inherently, if you're producing an audiobook like that, you are making choices that are adding on top of the author's choices,
right?
For better or worse. I mean, there's clearly like a real art to that kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
But for me, I like audiobooks only when it's like a Real Housewife or, you know, Tina Fey. Yeah. Have I mentioned that I'm trashy? That's where I really enjoy the audiobook experience.
What is the what's the third and final book?
This is going to be the sharpest right turn.
You know, I was trying to find a smoother segue, but I looked at the recording number and I was like, oh, all
right.
You know, we gotta. Time marches on.
I was driving here and I was like, you can't, this third book, I was like, you can't do that. It's too weird.
Wow. Okay.
I was like, because I knew I was doing Bossypants and I'm glad my mom died. And I was like, just choose another thing in that realm, round it out with like 3. But if I'm being honest, this is a piece of text that I return to all the time.
Okay.
And it is the play, Our Town.
Fuck yeah, dude. I love Our Town.
I love Our Town so much. And it really sticks with me. I think the ending of that play really haunts me. And when I think about life and the passing of time, and as I've gone through high school, where I discovered this play into my 20s and then into my 30s, and I actually feel the passage of time. And I started to be like, oh, I see what Emily was so freaked out about, you know, because this is a play. If you don't know, it's a play about a small New England town. It's like just like a classic, like slice of life play, like really no frills, just following a young couple from, you know, young years to being married. And it's nothing particularly extraordinary about the play. And then at the very end, well, can I do a spoiler for Our Town?
You know what? I'll allow it.
Okay. It's been around for a while.
If you haven't seen Our Town, then I guess your high school didn't have a drama department.
Right. Exactly. That's
I said the fucking homeschooler. I saw a production of this in college.
Okay. But at the very end, Emily dies and it comes back to Earth to just sort of look back on the life. I think she chooses to revisit like her birthday. And she's looking around at all these beautiful things around her. You know, her mom's cooking on the stove, the sun is shining, her family's all together. And she's like, everyone's miserable. No one's seeing it. Like how miraculous it is.
Yeah.
And she's panicked because she's beyond the grave and she can't tell the family, like, lock in.
This is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
And it really, like, I get chills like talking about it. This is like probably the piece of text that I like return to the most often. And so sorry that it's not a celebrity memoir.
No, I haven't thought about this play in a long time, but when I do, I get those chills.
Yeah.
How did you discover it? Did your high school do a production of it? Were you perhaps in it?
My high school did a production of it. Okay. I was not in it.
Okay.
And
Their loss.
I didn't audition for it. I think I was like, I think I was feeling too cool for it. You know how I did a lot of high school theater, but
I'm not doing that fucking boring,
you know, like the politics around it. I honestly don't remember, but I was probably like mad that I didn't get a lead in the previous show. And I was like, they don't deserve my talent. Also, we had like a really pretentious theater director who they did Our Town, but they did it like site specific. Do you know what that means?
What does that mean?
Like it wasn't on a stage. It was like at various places throughout the town of Acton, Massachusetts, where I grew up.
Oh.
And the audience would like get on a bus and drive to like a graveyard, and then they would like do a scene. And I was just like, that sounds like a hassle.
I kind of like that.
It was cool.
That's kind of cool.
It was very like, okay, because again, I was on my way to NYU. I was really feeling myself. I was like, I'm so sophisticated. I think that I was like, no, I'm a purist. Like we don't.
Thornton Wilder did not.
He
was the
wrote
author,
it
right?
exactly as it should be. And I think that part of the point of the show, by the way, I should mention, is that it is a play within a play. Like the main character is the stage manager,
right?
And he's sort of showing you like that. You know, this is like our town. Like we're putting on this play for you, the audience. And so I thought that like that element was sort of lost. Again, I was 18 and I had no business being critical of any of this, but that's where I was. I don't remember where I discovered it, but I know when I fell in love with it.
When was that?
I saw a production of it in New York City. This was probably 2009, 2010. You can definitely look this production up. It was a professional production. Michael Shannon was the stage manager.
Oh, wow. He's so good.
And he's a brilliant actor. Yeah. And also, have you seen you're straight, so you don't know what I'm talking about. But he's really gifted.
I can hang. What do we got?
He's really gifted in all sorts of ways. If you've seen certain movies of his.
Oh, he's got a big one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, that's who I'm thinking of, right?
I don't know.
The one who plays in the movie where he's the sex addict and he's naked all the time. And he's got a huge fucking
that's Michael Fassbender.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Also a great actor. So, huge dong. Yeah. Although it might have been a prosthetic.
Oh, that would make sense.
Most penises in movies are prosthetics.
I know, but the way it was moving.
But you know, you can tell.
I could tell. But it was Michael Fassbender. Okay. So I mean,
that's a great movie though. Shame.
Yeah. Shame.
Shame. Yeah.
Is that okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
With and Michelle Williams, right? It's like the sister. Or
no, it's Carey Mulligan.
I'm really not good at talking about this movie. Anyway,
was Bossypants written by Tina Fey? Are we sure it wasn't?
Exactly. We'll do a fact check on this later. Anyway, I'm sure that Michael Shannon has a huge penis too. Okay, but I just don't know that to be true.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments if you have any intel on the size of the various Michaels.
If maybe Michael Shannon listens, maybe he saw the billboard.
Hey.
So okay. This production, so the whole point of how you're supposed to do Our Town historically is just an empty stage with folding chairs.
Okay.
Like that is like sort of written into the text. That is the idea. But what this production did is they get through the entire play, nothing but empty chairs. There is, as far as you understand, no set. And then in the last 5 minutes, when Emily dies and comes back to Earth and she's seeing Earth through the eyes of someone who is like all knowing and like an angel, right?
Yeah.
So she's seeing Earth for the first time, like unfiltered, and they reveal the most intense, detailed set you've ever seen. It was a real working kitchen. The mom was frying bacon on the stove, which you could smell.
Whoa.
This set probably cost them $500,000 to make for like the last 5 minutes of the play.
That's incredible.
And it totally works because that's what the experience of life is. When you're in the middle of it, you're not paying attention. It's just folding chairs and a black stage and there's nothing special about it. And then she has the benefit of being able to drop back into that world and be like, look at all of the detail that I didn't see.
Wow.
And I was just a fucking mess.
That's beautiful.
I was like, I need to go with my parents. I haven't been kind to them, you know? And that was now Our Town I would describe as like my Barnes and Noble book. Like when I'm at a Barnes and Noble to kill like an hour before a movie or whatever, I'm going to pull Our Town off the shelf.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's okay. I want to come back to Our Town, but I've never like heard that articulated before, but I do feel like that's such a thing.
I think for me it is.
When you're at a bookstore and you just want to like kill some time, are there any books you pull off the shelf that you already know and you're just like, oh, I'm going to pull this off the shelf and like take a look at it. I like that. Okay. Yeah. So that's the one. That's the one for you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what mine would be.
If I can recommend, if you don't have a Barnes & Noble book, what I will say is that plays in general make for great Barnes & Noble books because you can get through a whole one.
Yeah, true.
If you're a fast reader, they're designed to be mounted on stage in like 90 minutes. Yeah. If you're a fast reader, you can read a play in 45 minutes, And so I love going to the drama section of Barnes & Noble and just like pulling out like plays that I love and then plays that I never heard of.
Yeah.
I'll either do that or I kill a lot of time. Or I'll go to the humor section and I'll pull like a David Sedaris book and read an essay or something like little short because you can't get through like War and Peace
right
before seeing Despicable Me. You know what I mean? So
when you're at the Grove,
exactly the Grove.
I love just killing a little bit of time at Barnes and Noble. Though.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah,
and I feel like
an independent bookstore.
Well, yes, as well. But I think any form of going into a physical bookstore is a net positive for the world, even if it's a big corporation.
Yeah, it's like Barnes & Noble is a corporation, but like I think as far as corporations go, maybe they've done horrendous, heinous things that I don't know about.
Now people are stomping on the keyboard.
Now people are breaking their keyboards to come after me. But like it's like they're still selling books.
Yeah.
The authors are still getting paid. Like and it's also I grew up in rural towns.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in places where it was a big deal to drive 30 minutes to go to fucking Walmart.
Yep.
And so like Barnes and Noble was the only bookstore. One, Barnes and Noble was like an hour away from me. So it was a treat to get to go to Barnes and Noble. And like, so in a lot of communities, that is the only game in town, which is like sad, but they still have like a huge selection of books. And
you can also like, you can use it as a browsing tool. And if you happen to live in a place with an independent bookstore, you can find a book that you're really interested at Barnes and Noble and then go buy it from the local guy,
Exactly.
But it's just like I don't know. I love the experience of being like enveloped by 3 floors.
It's
books.
It's the expanse of it too. They also usually have free bathrooms.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Our town, I remember seeing it in college. It wasn't my college. My college wouldn't do that. But it was another college in that same town that I knew some people who went there. And my kind of connotation of it was that this is the play that every like lame high school does because it's just an institution, and it's easy. And so like I kind of went into it being like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to see the thing that everyone says is kind of lame and vanilla and boring and stuff like that. And I walked away just being like with that same feeling of like life is beautiful and I need to be more present and like treat the people in my life with more love. And it's like, what more could you fucking ask from a piece of art,
Yeah. I think I also think like as a young person, like finding our town boring is kind of the point. I think it's a text that you're kind of supposed to grow with.
Yeah.
I mean, even the cruelty of the fact that Emily can't realize the mistakes she's making until it's too late.
Yeah.
And I feel like in my life, when we do creative things, we're always hustling. We're always trying to like get the next thing done. And it's like, and I always have this feeling of like, once I get over that next hurdle, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to feel complete. That's when I'll take a moment to like stop and smell the roses.
Yeah.
But then you realize, oh shit, I'm in my mid 30s and I've been doing that for the last 15 years post-college. And I'm like, right. Like I'm missing the bacon frying on the stove.
Yeah. Boy, do I.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's this feeling of like, once I get to the other shore, then things will be great. And it's like, there is no other shore. You're on it.
This is the life.
This is it. Wherever you are, like, there you are, And I think that it's something I certainly lose track of.
Yeah.
I lose track of it with this podcast. It's sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, when I have a proper studio and I'm not just sitting on the couch with microphones and it actually like looks really good, like then, I'll feel better about it and I'll like enjoy it. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, I do want to get it to that point.
Yeah.
And I think that when I get it to that point, it will look and sound a lot better, but like it's happening right now, like you and I are having this conversation right now.
Yeah. And by the way, someday you'll reach that point where it's like a big glossy production and you'll look back and think, I miss when I was just like on the couch without all this pressure on me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
When
like
I'm doing my 700th ad for fucking BetterHelp.
Exactly. You'll be like, it used to be like so much simpler because time tricks us.
Yeah.
I get so nostalgic for years of my 20s that if I'm being honest, I was miserable for them.
Yeah.
And maybe I should have been more present in that moment and then I would have been less miserable. But
what's a like a creative chapter of your 20s that you're like the most nostalgic for?
I would say a time when like my creative world really opened up for me was when I got first hired to be a fellow at Clickhole. And it was my first real experience moving from like, I worked restaurants and retail and that kind of a job. This is my first I'm going to get paid to write comedy. I'm going to like sit in a writer's room with writers whose work I have admired for years and just like getting to be in that writer's room, volleying with people, learning what makes a good joke versus a bad joke. I mean, Clickhole still has that writer's room of brilliantly talented writers, of which I'm not one anymore. As a managing editor, I'm not in the writer's room.
Oh, you're not a brilliant writer.
I'm not brilliant anymore.
Yeah.
Sad to say. No, my job function, I support that writer's room,
right.
And I'm really proud to do that. But I getting that first experience of like getting to learn how a joke gets constructed, which is way more complex than you think. That was a time in life where I'm like, oh, I was really riding a high.
Yeah. Man. So how does it get?
What's that?
How does a joke get?
Well, I'll tell you in the next sentence. No, you know what's funny?
We'll put it behind the paywall.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I really learned from that writer's room experience that you're whenever you have like a go-to like thing of like, it's funny to talk about like, okay, like annoying coworker who like microwaves fish in the office microwave. Like that's such a go-to joke that like people have made before. And what I really learned from The Onion and Clickhole was like, they really pushed you on your bullshit of like, if you're kind of lifting observations that have already been made, they will throw out that joke so fast.
Wow.
And it's a really athletic experience to dig up like what's never been seen before and been poked fun at before.
I have to say that is the thing I love most about Clickhole is that like looking at a Clickhole post is, you know, my first reaction is usually, oh, that's funny. And then the second is like, I've never seen that combination of words before.
Yeah.
Like, it's so, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it's so off the wall, especially the ones where it's like it's quoting celebrities. It's saying like, oh yeah, you know, Michael C. Hall said what?
Right.
And it's something just completely batshit.
Yeah. That was how I first, that was one of the first tasks I did as a Clickhole writer, was writing those quotes.
Yeah.
And it is so hard.
Yeah.
I don't do it anymore because it's hard. But, you know, really like coming up with stuff that is both really out of the blue and bizarre, but not just random, you know, like crafting some sort of internal logic for the joke where it like kind of makes sense in this bizarre universe. Yeah. I would be like bashing my head against the wall trying to write those things.
You're like, Glenn Close could say that actually. Right. I could see that.
And I will like brag on behalf of the 4 Clickhole staff writers who are like full-time running that thing. I believe that they are like some of the funniest people on the planet. And I think they'll all be big stars someday. That's what I believe.
Well, I hate to wrap this up.
This has been so fun.
I'm glad. I've had a great time.
Me too.
And I forgot to plug this at the front, but I got you a book that you can open.
I would act shocked, but I've listened to the podcast. And this has been sitting there the whole time.
It has been sitting there the whole time. It's kind of Chekhov's thing. I realize now, so we tried something for our audio listeners. I tried something new today where we're both holding the microphones. So Steven has set down the microphone because he's opening this, wrapped book.
Okay, and now I did the string I had to do with both hands.
The string is tough. The string is it sheds. But
wait,
you're
kidding me. Do you know?
So the book is A Good Person by Kirsten King.
Get out.
Who I think you know.
I do, and I haven't read this yet, and I was going to. Oh, I'm so excited for this.
So this book, Kirsten is going to be a guest on this podcast very soon. So I read this book.
Oh my gosh.
She sent me an earlier. That's not the copy you're reading. I went out and got you a copy. But I really enjoyed this book. It's very twisted and fucked up and kind of an exercise in how unlikable can you make a protagonist.
That's
and
awesome.
Still have the reader be along for the ride. She did a great job. But I think you guys work together at BuzzFeed. Is that right?
We work together at BuzzFeed, and we have a lot of mutual friends. We've gotten dinner sometimes, and we're both from Massachusetts, which, as you know, because your girlfriend's from Massachusetts, that's like, that's a really elite club of people.
Well, I've got good news. This book is set in Boston.
Oh, I'm so excited. No, you couldn't have picked a better choice for me because this is like number 1 on my like list of books to read.
Hell yeah.
I will also just say a little inside media industry thing. It is so rare. Because she's killing it right now. Like everyone's raving about this book. They're going to make it like into, I forget if it's a show or a movie, but they're making it something.
I think it's been optioned for a film.
Yeah. And it's so rare in media to see people succeed where I'm like, and you're a good person. But I really feel that I really like Kirsten a lot. I'm not even that close with her, but I just really like her. And I'm like, so like every time she hits a new milestone when she's doing all these things, and I'm like, yeah, Kirsten, go.
Hell yeah.
She's a good person.
A good person.
Unlike her protagonist.
Unlike the protagonist. It's about a woman who she like her situationship dumps her, and so she gets like basically an Etsy curse put on this guy,
like Charlie Kirk style.
I'm not 100% sure.
So these people hired an Etsy witch to curse Charlie Kirk.
Oh, really?
You don't have to include this part, but you might get some weird reactions. But that did happen to Charlie Kirk.
Oh wow, okay.
Like right before.
Well,
anyway, you were saying
the protagonist puts a Charlie Kirk style curse on her situationship, and then he ends up dead.
Whoa.
And then
that's a great
it goes from there. So
also what a great cover. I know you're not supposed to judge books.
You're not supposed to judge a book by a cover.
But it's a beautiful cover.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy it. And thank you for being here. Before we go, what do you got to plug? We've talked about it some, but
well, I have an advice column, Stephen Please. It comes out once a week. And I like to think it's fun.
I think it is.
Every Thursday, I answer a few questions that readers send in. There's a drawing or two. And my whole thing is like, if you let Old Navy email you like 5 times a day, you should let me email you once a week. I'm way more fun. And you can subscribe at stephenplease.com. And my name is spelled Stephen with a PH.
Stephen with a PH.
Stephen with a PH.
He's one of those.
I know. Well, my mom, I think it was like the drugs after giving birth. She was feeling a little fancy.
She was like, I want people to be a little unsure if it's Stefan.
Right. And by the way, and that's what my whole life has been, Stefan or Cake Twink. But yeah, stephenplease.com. Subscribe.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And for everyone watching and listening, thank you for watching and listening. And as always, keep reading.